So what I want to read into next is strategy one. So this is page 175 of Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claud Anderson. You can get a copy of the book at powernomics.com. I'm going to keep saying that just to make sure everybody knows where they can go. Strategy one, leadership. Humans, like all orders of life, seek leadership and find it naturally. But in America, white society has been the proactive institutional leader, and Black America has reactively followed the new leaders who arise in response to each new issue or event. So Dr. Claud Anderson is saying right here that one of your biggest problems right now is that you're not proactive. It's a community, you're trained to be reactive. So somebody gets shot or something bad happens. Next thing you know, everybody's like, oh my God, we got to do something. And there are people who say, why didn't you do something to prevent the problem? Why are you just reacting to the problem after the problem has occurred? So one of the biggest problems you have right now is that your leaders kind of prop out of the ground in response to something that has happened. So I want you to start paying attention to that when you see the next incident happen, the next police shooting, or the next, next time somebody calls Black people the N-word or whatever. Like, I want you to watch how people respond and watch how leadership kind of pops up out of nowhere. And you're, because you're responding to something that has happened before. And he's saying you shouldn't do that. You want actual institutional leadership that can say, what are the things that could happen and how do we prepare in advance? I tell my daughter all the time, my little one, I put her on my Instagram, Taylor, I call her Tater or Tay-Tay. And I when I talk to Tay-Tay every day, I say to her, preparation is the key to success. Preparation is the key to success. The people that control the present are people who prepare for it in the past. The people who prepare today are the ones who control the future. Preparation is the key to success. You can't win yesterday by preparing for it tomorrow. You can't win yesterday preparing tomorrow. You should have started 5 years ago. So let's keep reading. The power and resource disparity between Blacks and whites has caused Blacks to have different standards for selecting, developing, and recognizing leadership. Beyond the fact that there are numerous definitions of leadership, the most important factor in examining Black leadership is the understanding that power and leadership are relationships based upon socioeconomic motives and needs. Leaders are individuals who can induce others to cooperatively work towards certain goals that represent the values and motivations of both the leader and the followers. To fully understand the nature of leadership requires understanding the essence of power, because leadership is a special form of power. The goal of forming new Black leadership is to acquire, for Blacks in this lifetime, economic justice, wealth, power, and equal enjoyment of the rewards and benefits of the American dream. So according to Dr. Anderson, he's saying that this is what your Black leaders should be aiming for. This is, again, page 175 on Black Labor, White Wealth. Yeah, in this lifetime, the goal is to create economic justice, to find wealth, power, and equal enjoyment of the rewards and benefits of the American dream. So that's what he says your leaders should be doing for you. Not just looking pretty on the pulpit, not just giving fancy speeches, not just showing up at the Grammys, not just talking about how great they are, but literally economic justice, which to me means possibly a redistribution of wealth and capital, right? Wealth, power, and equal enjoyment of the rewards and benefits of the American dream. So he said. So here's this analysis. He says, one, in a competitive society, there are no mechanisms to give voice to unorganized and inarticulate groups. So if you're not organized and you're not articulate, nobody's going to listen to you. I wonder if this is part of the reason why they have encouraged young people to not be articulate. Has anybody ever noticed how the ability to articulate ideas has absolutely hit an all-time low among some of our young people? Like, have you ever seen like a text or tweet conversation between a bunch of kids that never really were taught how to properly communicate? Now, again, I'm not making fun of it. I'm not dogging them out or anything like that. I'm not trying to say young people ain't nothing. These are brilliant kids, but there's something there in the sense that it's cool that you can't, if you have a way of talking to your friends, but at some point you're going to have to be able to talk to other people. If you're looking for a job, you got to know how to talk to the people that you want to hire you. If you're trying to do business, you need to be able to talk to other business owners properly and make your pitch in a certain way. So I would argue, again, going back to when I mentioned to you guys, I got to look it up, but that mayor or governor who signed the rule saying now that kids don't even have to be able to count or read in order to get a high school diploma, that is one of the ways that they are stealing $1 trillion at least per decade from Black people by destroying their kids through a horrible educational system. That's why I'm not here to fight to get white people to build better schools. I'm not here to fight to get the government to fund education more. I'm here to fight with black people to say, you got to find a way to intervene and make sure your kids get educated. We can be the school system. We have the technology to do it. Between me and the other scholars that are out here and the internet, you can give your kids a college education by the age of 12. You just got to pay attention. You just have to use the resources that are right in front of you. So we can do this. Okay. So next, he says, white society develops and conducts its substantive training on many fronts simultaneously within government, academia, the media, and corporate and other institutional structures. They manipulate and manage these entities so that they will reflect white society's wishes and attitudes about all major socioeconomic issues, especially race. Blacks have limited access to and control of established institutions. But so when I was at Syracuse University, I remember pointing out to the university, I said, you have a bunch of black professors that are over in the Africana Studies department. You have some black administrators maybe that you put in the diversity office. But when it really comes to who decides what's going to happen in this institution and how things are going to work, those are white people. Those are mostly white people, right? And that is what institutionalized racism looks like. And so the answer to that, though, isn't so much for me to go in there and burn down the building and get mad and say, I need you to change this and change that. There are people out there that are trying to do that, and I wish them the very best. I think that it means also us establishing what it means to realize that you ain't white, right? To realize you're not white. So that means that because you're not white, your community has a different set of needs than the white community needs, right? The white community has hundreds, maybe thousands of universities that were established by people 200 or 300 years ago. They can just go to college, get a job, and just fit right into the system. Everything works out fine for them. When you're black and you think you're white and you do exactly what white people do, that process doesn't work for you. So you say, well, you know what? I don't have to be a leader. I don't have to create anything. I don't have to start a business. I don't have to do none of that. I can just go to school and then go get a job, just like Missy and Bobby and Sally and Joe, the white people in my class, and I can do just fine. Well, then what happens is you find out that you end up becoming part of what they call the angry black middle class. The angry black middle class, many of you are in this room right now, are basically people who did everything right. You didn't go to jail. You didn't kill nobody. You didn't do nothing stupid. You did everything you were supposed to do. You didn't go out and get hooked on crack. You studied every day. You made good choices. You got your education, and then you find out that you're still gonna be treated differently because you're black, right? You get that fancy job, maybe if you're lucky, and then you get there and you're like, my God, like there's 80 people in my department and I'm the only black one, right? That's terrible for me. Right? It's that forced assimilation. And some people can navigate that. And if you can, I'm very happy for you. But a lot of people can't. And even the ones who do are really unhappy. They're really stressed out. They need therapists, maybe a lot of alcohol, maybe they need some psychiatric medication. I met a guy one time who told me about his fancy job at a bank. He was really educated. He had an MBA, and he talked about the racism on this fancy bank job where he was making $250,000 a year. And he said that the racism was so bad that that his doctor said it had zapped the testosterone out of his body. He said, literally, yeah, Dr. Boyce, the doctor said that my testosterone was gone. And I was like, wow. I was thinking, man, he was really, like, literally emasculated. Like, they talk about emasculation, like in a theoretical sense. No, he was really He said his body was behaving like his wife. Like he couldn't get it up for sex. He was sleeping all the time. He was getting bloated. Like when women have their cycles and stuff, like he was getting bloated and gaining weight, just literally because he had no testosterone, right? And then he said, but I figured it all out. He said everything's fine now. So he came downstairs with a big old basket of pills. He had to take about 8 different pills, and he was looking at me. He's like, "Yeah, Dr. Boyce, everything's fine now. Everything's fine." And he didn't sound like everything's fine. He was talking kind of fast, and I was just kind of smiling and listening, like, "Okay, all right, okay, well, man, wow, okay, good luck." And excuse me, and I remember seeing all these pills he had to take just to deal with the psychological chaos that was caused by dealing with a racially hostile environment. Like the microaggressions literally had emasculated him and made him technically insane. And he said the best day of his life was when he got fired from his job. He said I never felt a burden lifted off my shoulder like that one. And so, and some of y'all can relate. I assume you can relate. And so what I'm saying to you is, going back to my basic point, which is that you ain't white. What that means is that I think that any black person who wants to be successful has to figure out, okay, what does success look like for me, and what is the unique process that I must go through to get the success that I value. Your community doesn't need more employees. You need more business owners. You also need people that are capable of participating in what I call decentralized black leadership. Leadership is a skill that you learn, just like cooking, just like becoming an accountant, just like playing football. I personally have had a leadership coach for years, because when I realized I had all this influence over people, I said, well, I don't want to screw it up. I want to make sure that I am leading people in a way that makes sense, that's ethical, that achieves the goal, that solves the problem, right? So ultimately, I encourage you to be very conscious. Again, go back to that word conscious. Everybody wants to talk about being conscious and what it means to be conscious. Half the people out here talking about they woke ain't woke for nothing. They sound asleep talking about I'm woke. You in a dream? You ever have a dream where you really think you woke up in the dream, but you really still asleep? Like you dreamed that you got up and put your socks on and put your clothes on for work and like got in the car and drove to work, but then you realize you were asleep the whole time. A lot of our people in that category, in my view. They use all this woke language that they learned, while they were at Berkeley, and they really think that they're woke. And I'm sitting there like, you have no idea what it means to be awake. You have no idea. So ultimately, what I'm saying to you is that when you talk about consciousness, part of consciousness is thinking things through and being intentional. Intentionality means that that you say something like, I am going to intentionally make sure that I raise my children to be leaders, not followers. Because if they can't lead, then what's going to happen is they're going to get led down a ditch by one of these other toxic young black men out here that's been trained to be a drug addicted rapper, right? Or get into nonsense, right? If they can't lead, they're going to be led by people who are stupid, bold and stupid. You got a lot of bold people that are literally going straight to hell in the handbasket, leading all their friends down the wrong way. A lot of y'all know friends like that. Some of y'all probably got friends in jail who might say, he's 35 years old, he's been in prison for the last 15 years, and he says, yeah, one night I was with my friends, and so I didn't know they was going to go rob the liquor store. Next thing you know, the judge gave you 20 years, just like everybody else, right? So the ability to lead is not just an important skill to have and a valuable skill to have. It's also essential for the survival of a black person in America, particularly a black man. If you cannot lead yourself, at least, and lead the people around you or the people you care about, then you're going to be led by somebody, in many cases, who's going to lead you down into a ditch. All right, so let me keep going. All right, so the next thing Dr. Anderson says here is he says, black leadership too often does not spring forth from systems of leadership training, but rather results from a call into community service by a higher power to resolve a particular dilemma. It follows that the calling is answered usually from the ranks of the most independent sectors of black communities, churches, small business operators, and community agencies. Most individuals from these organizations have served their communities without the benefit of broad and competitive organizational resources behind them. Number two, lacking access to comprehensive data, talent banks, and well-trained organizational leadership, Black America has no formal way to assess past accomplishments and potential leaders. It is difficult to distinguish between benevolent and self-serving leadership. So what he's saying is that you don't know the difference between leaders that are going to help you and the ones that are actually going to serve themselves. Aspiring leaders, on the other hand, are sometimes forced to substitute rhetoric for research and emotionalism for planning. So he said that many leaders, because you're dealing with an audience that responds to rhetoric and emotionalism, they actually substitute that. They say, if I sound good, it doesn't matter if my ideas actually are good, right? That's what he's saying. He's saying that because of the way people think and the way people are processing information, people say, well, if I just go out and I say, if you don't get back, then you won't get jack, right? Or whatever. I know how to rhyme my words when I'm talking, even though I ain't saying nothing significant. People will respond to me more because I'm rhyming, hence why all the rappers are kind of your leaders, right? As opposed to actually providing good information and good research behind your ideas. So he says, aspiring leaders, on the other hand, are sometimes forced to substitute rhetoric for research and emotionalism for planning. Those who are most charismatic and eloquent are elevated to leadership status. But to survive within their own communities, these leaders must remain constantly visible and involved with all levels of the Black community while being exposed to adversarial elements, negative press, conservative government policies, radical groups, etc., outside the Black community. So not only is this Messiah, the charismatic Messiah-based leadership model, not very effective, right? It doesn't get things done because you can't have sort of one guy who thinks he knows the answers to everything or tells you that he's the king of this and I'm the greatest at that and I'm the most important, whatever, right? Like that kind of talk. That right there is a problem because what you're basically kind of saying is that you're the alpha and the omega of everything that's important in Black. That's a huge problem. It doesn't work that way. But also that person is actually in danger because that person becomes an easy target. In China, they have that saying that the fattest pig always gets slaughtered. So when you are thrust out there as like, I'm the new Martin Luther King, I'm the new Marcus Garvey, I'm the new Malcolm X, well, then what they do is they target and they'll discredit that one person. So effectively, leadership needs to be decentralized. It needs to be something where you've got lots and lots of leaders. It needs to be institutionalized where there's some sort of formal structure and process. There has to be substance to go with the flash because you have a lot of fast talking Negroes out here. Like being able to talk fast and sound good, it really gets over on a lot of people. And if your ideas don't have substance or there's no action behind them, then you're not really getting anywhere. So let's keep going. So number 3, many Blacks who are capable of leadership lack the tools of leadership, which is access to power, media, and money. We talked about that earlier. I mentioned to you guys that I said, well, when I first started doing any of this, I said, I got to find a way to get some money and I got to find a way to get some media. And we had to create media through social media, right? Blacks who accept the mantle of leadership often fail to significantly change the conditions of Black America because they are reactive rather than proactive. So instead of reacting to things, how about you make a plan? What is your plan? You know what? If you're talking about having power and freedom and all these other things that we talk about, what is your power plan? Can you name the power plan? I tell my daughters, I say, look, if you want to know what a man's all about, ask him what his plan is. And if it takes him more than 30 seconds to get into it, that ain't the man for you. He's not going to succeed most likely because if most successful people, most powerful people don't get there without a plan. What is your plan? What is your strategy? What is your lifestyle? What are your values that you're committed to that are going to help you to achieve whatever it is you're trying to achieve? So he says reactive rather than proactive, single issue or event oriented, and weak on long-term planning. So you ever heard that old saying that says great minds talk about ideas, average minds talk about events, and small minds talk about people? Well, I agree with that in the sense that a lot of times when you're talking about what's going on in the Black community, you'll hear people say, well, yeah, when George Floyd got killed, right? Or when Breonna Taylor got killed, right? Which is, those are terrible incidents, but those are events. Those are individual one-off events. Breonna Taylor's family got $10-12 million, or whatever she got in the settlement. They're going to be fine. They're going to be good, right? George Floyd's family, I'm sure that if they haven't gotten their money yet, they're going to get it, right? But the question I would ask you is, with all the screaming and hollering and yelling and jumping up and down over George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, what changed? I mean, what really changed on a systematic level for Black people everywhere? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I mean, nothing that I can see. Nothing significant, right? So ultimately, the question is this change systematic, or is it something that's sort of a one-off where you're just going to kind of end up repeating yourself over and over again? So the next number 4, he says, the dream of Black-white integration caused many Blacks to abandon their interest in maintaining a strong sense of community or to know, trust, and be responsible for their neighbors' well-being. Many in the Black middle class have joined in the tail end of white flight to the suburbs and have failed to reconnect with their old communities. They failed to connect with their culture and racial realities. Responding to the integration process, Black civil rights leaders have sought to accommodate and access institutionalized white wealth and power rather than to seek to establish their own. So here's where I'm going to go with this. And by the way, we're on page 177 of Black Labor, White Wealth. You can get a copy at Powernomics.com. So that I want to make sure everybody knows that. All right. So here's the deal. I think about things like Colin Kaepernick and the whole NFL thing. And I just don't understand. It's beyond me. Why none of these celebrities have been pulled together to create a sports league. I just don't understand. I would need them to kind of explain to me. The only thing I can think of is that it could come from perhaps a lack of confidence. Maybe they don't believe they can do what white people do, um, or maybe they are concerned about the money, right? Like the payoff, the financial payoff for me right now is not that big for me to start something new. I'd rather tag along with whatever the NFL owns and get a piece of that, or whatever Nike owns and get a piece of that. And what I really think people should understand is that Nike and the NFL and all these institutions that you love so much that you're trying to beg for a seat at the table with, they all had a beginning. They all had somebody that was willing to endure very humble beginnings to create that mighty empire. When I went to visit the Nike campus. It's a beautiful campus. I knew the former president of the Air Jordan brand. His name was Larry Miller. He's a very good man. And Larry invited me and my wife to come up to the Nike campus, and we went into the Michael Jordan building, which is where his office was. And I sat with him for a long time, and they gave us a great big tour of the entire Nike campus. And on this tour, I remember seeing this room where they told the history of Nike, and they showed how Phil Knight and his homeboys got together and decided to create a little crappy little sneaker company where they were literally making track spikes with a waffle iron. They were literally doing something. I remember it was something weird with a waffle iron in the back of his raggedy ass van that he was using to make track shoes. That's the origin of Nike. That is an incredibly raggedy origin. Most of y'all got businesses that have businesses in here, don't have businesses that are as raggedy as that. Whatever you got, you're probably not as raggedy as Phil Knight was when he started Nike out of nothing. So what I'm sitting there trying to say to you is that if Phil Knight can start that raggedy business where he's making track spikes or track shoes with a waffle iron, then why in the hell do we have these multi-million-dollar, even billion-dollar athletes and entertainers who still somehow swear they can't start a sports league? Phil Knight started off with making track shoes in the back of his van with a waffle iron, and that company's now worth $250 billion. The NFL has dozens of franchises that are worth hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion each. I don't know what the average value of an NFL franchise is, but the Chicago Bears were purchased for like $500 or something like that. Let me see here. I'm really curious about this now. Let me look this up. The value of NFL franchises in order. Let's see. The Dallas Cowboys are worth $6.5 billion. The New England Patriots are worth $5 billion. The crappy New York Giants, who can barely win a football game, are worth $4.8 billion. The Los Angeles Rams are worth $4.8 billion. Do I need to continue, or is that enough information? Does that give you enough insight into how much wealth is being lost because you don't have the leadership that will sit down and simply make a plan to create something new? Tagging along behind the white man like you are somehow his little brother or his little sister is literally about the most pathetic thing that we can do. That is literally the exact opposite of black excellence and black pride and black power. So let's keep going. This is interesting. The Washington football team, another crappy team that can hardly win a game, worth $4.2 billion. The terrible owner who keeps ruining the team, but he's worth $4.2 billion. San Francisco 49ers worth $4.17 billion. Chicago Bears, which was purchased for, I think, less than $500, is now worth $4 billion. New York Jets, another crappy team that can't win a game, worth $4 billion. The Philadelphia Eagles, and they're mediocre butts. They're not that good. You know the Eagles ain't that good. $3.8 billion. The Denver Broncos, another mediocre team, $3.75 billion. I could keep going. In fact, did y'all know the lowest value team in the NFL is the Buffalo Bills, and they're worth $2.27 billion. So they have created all that white wealth using mostly black talent. Pay attention now. And they did it when they started the league selling the franchises for like $200. Do y'all understand what I'm saying when I tell you that it baffles me that we've never had a consortium of athletes get together and entertainers and get together and just say, let's create our own league. I do not understand that, right? And and really some of that kind of falls on all of us, right? It's not just on them, but again, if you're making albums about how much money you have, then clearly you must not have that much money. You must not have any power. You must not have any brains or any vision, because if you're really worth all that money, if you're really shining that hard and you're really doing that well, then there should be at least 4 or 5 significant institutions that are employing hundreds, if not thousands of Black people that are coming out of your nest. What are you giving birth to? What are you manifesting, Black man and Black woman? The Black woman gave birth to the universe, damn near. What are you manifesting? The Black man, your manhood is the ability to manifest, like the God that you're supposed to be. What are you manifesting? Why are you babysitting another man's vision? You're supposed to be a man, but you are literally the nanny for somebody else's vision. I could give a damn less about the NFL. Seriously, who cares? Let me stop. I think I made my point. You know, and one day I want to just go through the history of the NFL and how laughable it is, where you literally had a bunch of white folks who had like literally less money than most of the people who are listening to this podcast right now, who literally just said, let's create a league. We're going to see where this goes. Let's plant some seeds and let them grow. Now they have 28 franchises that are worth at least $2.27 billion a piece. That's I don't know if that's $1 trillion in wealth, but it's probably somewhere close. Let me keep going. Next, page 176, Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claud Anderson. You can get a copy at Powernomics.com. He says also, after nearly 400 years, Blacks have still not developed a comprehensive national public policy or master plan. That's not totally true anymore, because you do have the Powernomics plan. Even Ice Cube and his team did a great job with the contract with Black America. Everybody should read that. It's an excellent plan. He consulted with a lot of great scholars and did a wonderful job with that. I have laid out the plan. I've laid out very basic ideas. I've laid out the KID model, how to turn your child into a millionaire, knowledge, investment, discipline. We've got plans on everything from the Black Core of 3. Black people should educate our own children, create our own jobs, support Black businesses. Every Black child in America should know how to start a business by the age of 12. Every Black child should own shares of stock before the age of 6. Right? Every Black child should understand the importance of owning property and not being a renter and becoming an owner of property, since real estate is one of the most valuable assets in the country. So there are plans out here. We just have to make sure that we understand what those plans are. He says, nor have they coordinated efforts between Black communities and organizations to move Black America forward toward self-sufficiency and empowerment. Number 4, the dream of Black-white integration caused many Blacks to abandon their interest in maintaining a strong sense of community, or to know, trust, or be responsible for their neighbors' well-being. I remember when I used to talk about the accountability that hip-hop artists have to the Black community, I had so many people telling me that they owed nothing to Black people. That literally you leave them alone, get your hand out that man's pocket, why you hating, all this ignorant stuff. And most great communities have accountability. Many in the Black middle class have joined in the tail end of white flight to the suburbs and have failed to reconnect to their old community's culture and racial realities. Okay, I think I read some of that earlier, so let me jump forward. Next, number 5, Black communities tend to seek out one leader or messiah at a time. Most often, such an individual is the most visible person rather than the most able or committed. I have seen a lot of these visible people. I've seen a lot of the celebrities that people look up to. I really want you to understand where your real leaders are. The real leaders in the community are those fathers who are sitting their children down and teaching them Powernomics. The real leaders in the community are the mothers who are giving birth to these babies and raising them, because the mother is the first teacher. The real leaders in your community is that teacher who spends their own money to get school supplies for the kids at the school because she loves them so much, right? The real leaders in your community are the people who are really out here taking a stand, buying Black, investing Black, making moves, breaking generational curses, protecting the youth, loving kids that are not their own. Those are the leaders in the community. If you fit any of those categories, if you are doing any of those things, then you are a Black leader, if you ask me. You are leading through example, and I encourage you to continue to do that. People on TV ain't worth a damn. Most of them, about 95% of them, ain't really doing nothing in terms of moving Black people forward. This lack of self-imposed standards of leadership makes it easy for white society to use its powers to anoint leaders within Black communities. Unwittingly or not, this method protects the interests of white society and allows it to manipulate which Black leaders will be publicly acknowledged, respected, or rewarded. Institutional powers are used to discredit or remove aggressive Blacks, often labeling them radical or offensive, right? That's y'all seen that game play out. You see the types of people that are selected, and then you see the people that are deselected, right? You see you'll see the James Clyburns pushed to the front, and you'll see the Louis Farrakhan's pushed to the back. Well, but and while that is certainly true, and while I encourage you, if that offends you, then it should. I also I want you to understand that this actually makes perfect logical sense. If I am white and I'm a white supremacist and I want to maintain power over Black people, I do not want Louis Farrakhan anywhere near a platform. I would do everything in my power. If I am that man, I would do everything in my power to make sure that Black people never hear from Louis Farrakhan, that they never hear from Dr. Claud Anderson, they never hear from even a guy like me, right? Because that's how the game is played. That's what's supposed to happen. This is what happens in war. In war, the enemy does not do things to help the opposition. Right? That's logical, right? But the reason that it doesn't seem logical to you, and the reason it might burn you up and make you so offended, is because you never fully accepted the understanding that the enemy is actually the enemy. Or better yet, instead of saying the enemy, how about we just say the adversary, right? Because I don't think you have to necessarily be angry about it. I think you just have to go out and do something about it, right? When you play football, the other team's going to play defense. They're not going to do things that are against their own interests. The only group of people I've seen that are trained to do things that are against their own interests is pretty much Black people. Right? We're the only ones where we think that it makes sense to destroy ourselves. But everyone else kind of understands. They're kind of on code to say, hey, these Black people, if we give them too much power, bad things will happen. We were reading in the book earlier. Remember, I was telling you guys, 200 years ago, Black people were a third of the population. They saw the writing on the wall. They said, we do not want too many Black people in this country, so we need to open up our borders and bring more white people in. I mentioned to you guys in class last week that there's no evidence before, I think, the year 1681 where the term white was ever used to describe another human being. The term white man, white woman was invented specifically to create unity amongst different European groups so that they can maintain control over Black people. They said, whoa, if we don't find a way to unify, these Black people are going to take over. We won't be able to control them and extract the wealth that we're extracting, and they're going to kill us all, right? So that's when the term white was actually created. You can't go to 1582 and find somebody talking about a white man. There was no such thing. You were German, you were French, you were Irish, whatever. You were not white. There was no white and Black. That whole white-Black thing was made for America, right? So ultimately, that sort of unity, that sort of strategy, that sort of long-term thinking is exactly the kind of thing that we're doing right now. We're doing that now. When I talk to you guys about B1, meaning B1, which means be unified, which means that we are together when we are one, when we can focus on our vertical connection and get rid of the horizontal issues, when we find common ground instead of me finding the reason why I can't be around you. B1 is basically us doing exactly what other people have done to harm and to control us, right? B1 is simply saying, if you are one, if you go to your power base, if you plug into the wall, right? If you plug into your family, if you plug into your people, you plug into your power, you plug into your knowledge, you plug into your awareness, you build and create systems, then over a 30, 40, 50-year period, you will be able to accumulate massive amounts of power. You will accumulate so much power that even the Jewish community will be jealous of certain segments of the Black community. There are some of your children and grandchildren right now. I see you making those investments in those kids. And I just want to encourage you, keep doing it. Because I'm telling you, if you're teaching your kids about stocks and your child is 5, do you understand? I taught at Syracuse University. I taught at some other universities. Those kids didn't learn about stocks till they were in their 20s or 30s. So if your child is learning about stocks and real estate and all these other things at the age of 5, they are going to absolutely obliterate the game, especially if you give them some assets to work with. And again, you have time to do that, right? So make that master plan, and then that's how you create your superheroes. Every superhero has an origin story. What origin story are you giving to your kids? Every one of your kids that grows up and does something amazing, or your grandkids, they're gonna when they win awards and become billionaires, they're gonna tell a story about way back in 2021 about somebody who made the difference to them. Just the same way I talk about things my grandmother did for me in the 1970s, right? What story? Who are they gonna tell? Are they gonna tell that story about you? Well, if you want that to happen, then this is your time. This is your moment. This is your opportunity to leave that mark so that when you're long gone and dead, they're going to tell stories about how the little things you did back in 2021 allowed them to become a billionaire in the year 2060. All right. So let's keep going. Number 5, Black communities tend to seek out one leader or messiah at a time. We talked about that. Let's see here. Number 6, the world is rapidly changing, yet Black leadership seems frozen in time. Forces focused on alleviating the symptoms rather than the causes of racism impede meaningful change. Too many Black leaders continue to read from political and economic scripts that are hopelessly short-sighted in addressing the myriad of fast-approaching domestic and international changes. While keeping their eyes on the integration prize, Black hopes, families, and communities are being destroyed by rampant social pathology. So basically, he's saying that you're not innovating, you're not trying to involve like sort of the latest, greatest ideas. You have a lot of people that are just too old-fashioned to lead anything. Right? You can't lead Black people in 2021 the way you might have done it in 1972. It doesn't work, right? You have to be able to evolve. You have to be able to innovate. I watch a lot of documentaries about war because I'm fascinated by war. War is like splashing cold water on my face because it allows me to remember that this man don't care nothing about you, that the world don't care nothing about you, the world don't owe you nothing. If you can't defend and support and protect what you have, then somebody will come and kick you in the face and take everything you love right in front of you, right? And so ultimately, I watch these war documentaries because it gives me insight into how people really behave when they don't care about being politically correct. See, y'all got this political correctness stuff where everybody's scared to say certain words and call people certain names. But believe me, when the stuff really hits the fan, when human beings are really fighting for scarce resources, when they're defending their families and trying to protect their livelihood, they will break every rule, they will break every law, they will break every code. They don't give a damn, period. Right? So when I watched this documentary of World War II, I was really fascinated by how strong Hitler was in Nazi Germany and how they really were doing some things that were really difficult for the British and the Americans to overcome. And I remember watching the British scientists sit around and literally staying up all night trying to figure out how to crack the code, how to crack the communication code that the Germans were using to talk to each other, because they needed to try to crack this code in order to figure out where the U-boats were coming from to save lives. And then also they were trying to figure out how to create radar, so the radar could go further and and catch the planes before they actually got there. And then they were also trying to figure out what was another one that they had that. Oh, that's right. In the United States, they had the whole Manhattan Project, I guess that's what it was called, where they were trying to build the first nuclear bomb because they said if we build it last and they build it first, then they're going to drop that bomb on New York City and all of us will be dead. So we got to hurry up and get this done. That's pressure. Now put aside the ethics of it. We can talk all day about whether or not this was ethical or not. I'm not talking about that right now. What I'm talking about is just the practical reality that I saw, where literally you were in a situation where if you did not innovate, you were going to die, right? If you couldn't figure out how to be the smartest one in the competition, you were going to lose, right? It's like their scientists against our scientists or whatever it was, right? And it really was fascinating to me because it made me think about, I said to my brother, I said, I think I figured out the secrets to war, the things that help people win wars. And I said, I brought it down to the 4 I's. I use acronyms to help me remember things. And I said, it comes down to information. The team that has the most information wins. Information, innovation, and infinite industrialization. Now, what does that mean? Information means that if you're a reader, then you're going to be ahead of people who don't read. When they talk about the best way to keep things from Black people is to put it in a book, well, that don't apply to y'all. It better not apply to your kids, because I'm telling you that if you have less information than the other person, your child sits down with somebody else's child to have a business negotiation or to negotiate the property values in a gentrified neighborhood or whatever it is, your child's going to lose because they don't have information. The team that has the most information tends to win. So the ability to consistently consume information should be absolutely something that we do in a maniacal fashion. That's how you build successful Black kids. Innovation comes into play where you're simply learning how to do things smarter and more efficiently than the competition. So people who innovate tend to do well. If you look at Silicon Valley, the people that are making the trillions of dollars are the people that are able to innovate and come up with things faster than everybody else. So in war, it was kind of like innovation on steroids, because they literally said, if we don't innovate, if we don't figure out how to create better radar systems, or figure out how to decode the language, or figure out how to build a better bomb, then we're literally going to die. That's a lot of pressure, right? So that innovation is critical. It literally made the difference in life and death. The infinite industrialization comes into play in this way. And I've talked to you guys about this, and this links directly to white supremacy. The white man's magic superpower, in my view, is that in America, they have the greatest industrial machine in history. Like they're able to mass produce so much. So we have more guns in the United States than we actually have human beings. Did y'all know that? Like literally, like the industrial capacity of the United States is absolutely phenomenal, and I'm extremely impressed by that, right? And so to some extent, when you're talking about systematic racism, you're talking about the systems that mass produce whatever they want to see in the world. If they're mass producing jabs that they want you to take to deal with a virus, they can do that. If they're mass producing weapons, they can do that. In World War II, they had to mass produce ships and boats or ships and tanks and airplanes, right, in order to fight the Germans. So this ability to mass produce in a systematic fashion, which requires extensive systems and processes and delegation, allows you to kind of position yourself in a way that's makes you stronger and greater than somebody who's just kind of doing things in a very one-off kind of fashion, right? If you think about a football team that has a great system where everybody knows their job and everybody does their job well, and you got 80 players that are all on the same page, that are all on code, that are all good at what they do, that are all specialized in their specific talent, that team will defeat any super athlete any day of the week. Like you can have one great athlete against a whole football team. There's no way one great athlete can beat an entire team. It's not possible, right? So part of the reason that you lose in the white supremacy game, follow me on this. This is something I've thought about extensively, is that you will pin one super Negro, right? One black messiah against a whole goddamn army of people that are committed to staying on code with the white supremacist system, right? Literally, some of us have been led to falsely believe that one super Negro, one great black leader, can take on the entire army of systematic white supremacy. They can take on this army of institutions and resources that they perfectly positioned in order to defend and to protect their power. That's just not going to work. That's just not going to work. So in order for you to compete in this world, in order for black people to compete, we must have a different way of kind of thinking about things. And so here's one thing I would say. We got to get on code, right? We have to find a way to be on code on some level. We ain't got to be on code on everything. We ain't got to agree on everything. You could be a Democrat, somebody else is a Republican, whatever. I try to let things go. Like I think I saw Dr. Fauci said that you shouldn't invite your relatives over to the house if they haven't gotten the vax or whatever for Christmas. I ain't doing that, man. If you my relative, if you my cousin, you my cousin, period. I'm not going to uninvite you because you didn't get a jab. Whatever. We take care of our immune systems in our house, right? That's just what it is, right? Maybe it's not the best decision, but that's the one I'm going to make. So I'm not going to fight with you over something that I don't have to fight with you over. Instead, I would like to be on code with some very basic things. So a few basic things that most of us can agree on is black people need wealth. Black people should own assets. Black people should be investors. Black people should be producers. Black people should be job creators. Black people should produce leaders. Black people need to create institutions that are going to represent our interests. If you're doing that, then what's happening is you're able to do things in a more systematic way that allows you to compete in a world where teams and systems tend to accumulate the most power. Like you're living in a neighborhood it's almost like living in a neighborhood that's heavily gang affiliated. You got the Crips over here, the Bloods over here, MS-13's over there, the Gangster Disciples are over there. Well, you better form a gang. It may be your gang can be the anti-gang, but if you try to fight all that by yourself, then you become a target of everybody. Everybody's going to try to exploit you. Everybody's going to try to kill you. Everybody's going to try to harm you because you don't have a home base. So for black people, I believe that the development of a home base, regaining control of our educational process, meaning that we are the school system. We are the ones who are educating our kids. We are the greatest influence on our children. That's one of the solutions that I believe can actually work for our community. All right, so let's keep going. And you got to start listening to your experts. You got so many smart black people that are therapists, and Lord knows we all need therapists. My God, you can't have healthy relationships if you don't have a healthy relationship with yourself. That self-hatred causes us to cut people off and cuss people out and snap on people and for no reason, and all that's very, very bad for forming coalitions. So everybody needs some therapy, but you've also got experts in every single walk of life that can help you to get to where you need to get to. So let me keep going. Let me keep reading here. I'm gonna read a little bit more, and then tonight, me and my wife are actually going to work out, so I gotta go do that pretty soon. But let's see. Number 7. Oh, he says blacks witness the steady decline in the quality of their lives in cohort that things have got to get better. They exhort that things have got to get better. They borrow from the conservative white agenda and blame the problems on the symptoms and the victims rather than the systematic causes. Too many black leaders have the heart and commitment, but lack the vision and power. Number 7, tomorrow's pluralistic and increasingly competitive society will demand black leadership that will neither grow old nor be bought off or assassinated. Pay attention now. Did y'all catch that? You need leadership that does not grow old. You need leadership that cannot be bought. You need leadership that cannot be assassinated. It's hard to assassinate an institution. They did. Now, they did kind of do it a little bit with Acorns. Remember, Acorns, though, their big mistake was they were too heavily reliant on government funding. That, to me, was the reason Acorns ended up getting their butts kicked unfairly, by the way. I thought what they did to Acorns was terrible. You should look it up if you're ever curious about it. But in general, think about how many times we've had black leaders who either grew old and tried to stay young forever, but they eventually grew old and died, or they were paid off with a bucket of chicken, and next thing you know, they're talking crazy, and you don't know why, or they were assassinated and just gone, like disappeared. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, etc. Even to some extent, you might even throw a Tupac in there, right? Because Tupac was becoming something special before he died, and I think he would have grown into a great black man at some point. The national public policy on the use of blacks by design has kept blacks leaderless and weak in their pursuit of power and wealth. New black leadership must be just as devoted to achieving self-sustaining black communities within 10 years or less. Achieving this goal requires black leaders with visions, not dreams. The mind's eye of the new black leadership must be wide open. So you have to have a vision, not a dream. Dreams don't do a whole lot. The vision is something that you can actually build. So recommendations, he says, number 1, unlike a dream, the mechanisms of self-empowerment will not materialize on their own accord. New organizational leadership must arise and become the force behind a collective national movement that will provide a unifying framework that all existing black organizations can use to harness their potential, formulate a common direction, and prevent them from working at cross purposes. So what are the national visions that we talk about? There's two. There's two that come from the Black Business School. One is the Black Core of 3. The Black Core of 3 is our number 1 core value, which is designed to be very simple, something you can remember, but something that would move the needle for black people hugely if most of us apply this. 1, black people must educate our own children so that the children are not poisoned by the public school system. Number 2, black people must create our own jobs so that we're not forced to serve other people in order to pay our bills. Lastly, black people must support black-owned businesses so that those businesses can grow and provide the resources that we need in order for us to be successful. Though that's the Black Core 3. The other unifying vision is the B1 philosophy. B1 means that we understand we must be one to be successful. B1 means that we make ourselves number 1 on our own priority list. B1 means that we prepare our kids for the future. We give them everything they need to be successful, starting with here are the 7 things that a kid needs to be able to do anything he wants in life. 1, the ability to read and consume information. The more he reads, if he's reading every day, he'll always be the smartest one because he's always taking in information. The ability to write. Writing is the ability to articulate your ideas. So I have all this stuff in my head. If I'm a good writer and I'm practicing writing every day, I can bang it out. Many of y'all see me write thousands of articles where that's how I probably met a lot of you. I was writing articles and I got to where I could write articles really fast, and I would write articles in 10, 15 minutes, and they would go out and be read by 100,000 people. That was extremely important. I know in my own career, and I think it's important for your kids as well. The third thing is the ability to do math. Practicing math regularly, very important, because you can't build wealth, you can't do business if you cannot do math. So those are 3 basic skills. The next one, stock market investing. We talk about that. Your kids should own stock before they're in 1st grade. Number 2, ownership of real estate. A renter will never have as much power as the landlord. The renter is the donkey. The landlord is the jockey, right? So the jockey rides the donkey and the donkey does the work, but the jockey gets the reward. So you have to, if you have to rent for a while, that's fine, but you want to aim to become an owner, at least learn what it takes to eventually buy your property. If you want to do a favor for your kids, get them in position early by investing for them early so that when they get older and they know that I don't want to be a renter forever, I want to be an owner, they can go dig into all that money you've invested for them since they were 3, and they can go put the down payment on the property. Boom, you've probably moved them ahead of 50% of the country when it comes to wealth, just from that one little thing. Just from that one little thing. Number 3, the ability to start your own business, meaning AKA side hustles. It means creating options for yourself. It means that if that man decides he don't want to hire you, or he wants to cut you from your job, or the opportunity disappears, it's okay because you've gained the ability to operate as an economic god and create your own opportunities. You're not praying to white Jesus that a white man is going to come along and give you an opportunity that you've learned how to create for yourself. So the ability to create jobs is literally the line between sanity and insanity for millions of black people, because going to work for people who hate your guts is literally a kind of consistent toxic microaggression that kills people on a regular basis. A Harvard study showed that black men die earlier than anyone else, largely because they go to work every day and they're constantly dealing with the contempt that comes with being a black man in this country. In fact, actually, my wife, who's a relationship therapist, will tell you that one of the factors that causes early death is if you are constantly around somebody who doesn't like you, right? When you're on the receiving end of that contemptuous energy, that literally kills you in a marriage. It kills you also in the abusive marriage that we have with white supremacy. And then the next 2 things I would throw in there. So we mentioned the first 6 things. Next 2 things. 1, critical thinking skill. So critical thinking skill means that they can process information in a way where they're not just going to follow. They're going to actually look at it and make a decision for themselves as to whether or not that information is relevant for them or how they want to process that information. Critical thinking skills very important. That's how you teach your kids to play chess instead of checkers. That uses a part of the brain they call the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that separates you from an animal. The prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain that you use to engage in higher level thinking, like the ability to play chess or the ability to make a long-term plan, right? And what happens actually, pay attention now, Black people consume more media than anyone else. Why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because studies show, from what I understand, I'm not a psychologist, but I'm telling you a little bit about what I've read because I read a lot of stuff, is that watching TV reduces the ability of your prefrontal cortex. Did y'all know that? That literally your ability to generate your own thoughts and ideas is dwarfed and muted the more you're sitting there like a drone taking in crap that you're just watching on BET every day. So if you're just sitting there staring at the TV every day, and Black people stare at screens more than anybody else, right? The whole Tyler Perry network and Oprah Winfrey network, all that stuff was built off of Black people watching lots of TV, right? So the more you're sitting there watching TV, the more you're killing your own ability to engage in critical thinking skill, because you are reducing and diluting the abilities of your prefrontal cortex. So you're reducing yourself to the thinking of a dog. Right? A dog does not make long-term plans. A dog lives in the moment. Look at how often our society promotes instant gratification. If you look good, you got to go hit it. If it tastes good, you got to go eat it. Well, I didn't want to get the jab, but I just got it because, I just wanted to be comfortable. I wanted to go to the movies that day, so I just went ahead and got it, right? I'm not dogging. I'm not making fun of you if you got it. I'm just telling you that's the kind of that short-sighted thinking where you're not thinking about the long-term implications of your choices. That right there is the strategic blunder that ruins the lives of 80 or 90% of the people I know who have horrible lives. Most of the people I know who have terrible lives, I want you to go up to somebody you know who has a terrible life. I want you to find that person in your family, because I know you got them, who literally is always in a bowl of shit and doesn't know how they got there. And I really want you to say, well, how did you do that? Well, it seems to me that you kind of sometimes self-sabotage. You always end up in these bad situations, and you got 8 girls pregnant with and now you can't pay the child support. That doesn't seem like it was a good move for you. Like, how do you feel about that? And you know what they'll say a lot of times, if they have self-awareness, they'll kind of do like Mike Tyson does. They'll be like, yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, you're right. I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, you're right. Right? You know what I'm talking about? Like Mike Tyson does that. That's why I love Mike Tyson interviews. Like, he literally, back when he used to get on cocaine and go and crash into a wall or punch somebody in the face or beat up on his wife, he would go back and be really honest about the fact that he knew that what he was doing was wrong. It's just that he didn't have the discipline to be able to process how what he does today is going to impact his future. He didn't just that idea of delayed gratification, like I'm going to sacrifice by not indulging in something now because it's going to have long-term effects on me. That wasn't there for him. And a lot of that does come from your prefrontal cortex because dogs don't do that. If you give a dog a week's worth of food, the dog is not going to eat a little bit every day to save the food for the whole week. The dog is going to eat all the food today in an impulsive fashion. Thank you. I should keep it. That's a great term. He's going to eat it all today and he's going to starve for the next 6 days, right? So a lot of people that you know in your own life live like that. They live for the moment, right? Because instant gratification is encouraged in the society, especially amongst young people. I heard Yo Gotti in a song. He said, "We gonna ball today, F tomorrow." And I said, so you gonna ball today and you don't care nothing about tomorrow? Like tomorrow does not matter to you? Well, that's not a very good strategy for success, because most successful people are the people who prepare to be successful. The number one phrase, if I go and bring any of my kids in this room and I say, what is the number one phrase that you get tired of hearing me say every single day in this house? They would say, preparation is the key to success. And what I'm really saying to them, all I'm really doing is teaching them an investing concept. That's all investing is. That's where wealthy people and powerful people come from. All investing is delayed gratification. It's the ability to give up a little bit today so you can have more tomorrow. That's the context from which I'm speaking to you, because that literally is the number one factor that contributed to anything I've done in my life to this day that's been successful. It's that when I was 27, I knew I wasn't going to be 27 forever. So I said, I want to do certain things now so I can live good when I'm 37. And a lot of my friends weren't doing that. They just did whatever felt good. They just got into whatever situation felt right at the time. And I said, I'm not getting distracted by all that, because I want to have a great future for myself. Right? So little things like that, teaching that to your kids will give them the ability to do whatever they want in this world. This idea that somehow white people will stop you from being happy, and that racism is lurking on every corner, in your life. I don't believe that. I've never met a white man who stopped me from reading a book. I've never met a white man who told me I couldn't save my money. I've never been a white man who told me I couldn't take care of my kids. There are choices that you can make on your own, and I think that over talking about the power of white people actually is a form of white supremacy, because you're talking about them like they are these indestructible gods that you can't possibly ever compete with, and that you're somehow like a disabled child who's unable to stand up to the adults in the room. We don't do that over here. You acknowledge it and then you solve it. Period. All right. So Dr. Anderson also says, last paragraph, and then we're gonna take a break for today. He says, a new kind of Black Leadership Institute is needed to buttress the current scarcity of Black individual and organizational leadership. Blacks must establish a think tank with an intellectual infrastructure that focuses exclusively on formulating national policy blueprints for solutions to the multitude of conditions crippling Black America. This institute should be an independent, nonpartisan, tax-exempt research foundation. It should provide proactive research and promote comprehensive prescriptive strategies for achieving Black political and economic self-empowerment. It should be distinguished from other think tanks by the activism that should flow from its research and focus on those issues that are common to all Blacks, regardless of economic, social, or educational differences. All right, so what I'll say on that is that the Powernomics Institute, which is run by Dr. Claud Anderson, or it's called the Harvest Institute, which is part of the Powernomics Corporation, is a great example of that. If you appreciate the ideas of Dr. Anderson, I hope you'll go to powernomics.com and look at copies of his books and buy some for the people that you love if you already own a copy yourself. Also, the Black Business School. We're not a tax exempt organization, so we're not a 501c3 or anything like that. But literally, when we put together the Black Business School, that was the goal. So as a result, what we do is we collaborate with tons and tons of really smart Black people. Dr. Anderson is one, but there's about 30 other Black scholars and thinkers and leaders. Dr. Maurice Green, who runs the Black Doctoral Network, is a very good friend of the Black Business School. And there are lots of other people out there. And so ultimately, this is kind of happening. And we're not the only one. There are other places out there. But what's really important in my view is that these think tanks and these spaces where Black people get together to talk about Black issues, we can't do them in a way that leads to interference from outside groups. right? I don't necessarily preach this idea that white people can't be around. I don't have that kind of hate in my heart. I'm not going to tell anybody that they can't come to the All Black National Convention if they're white, because to be quite frank with you, there are people at the convention who are married to white people, and these are good people. I'm not going to make fun of you because you happen to have a cousin that's white that wants to be a part of what we're doing. I completely think that's okay. I know some people don't agree, but I'm not going to go. I'm not a hardliner in that way. What I want to avoid is the idea of white supremacist power structures controlling what we're able to do, right? So I don't mind being around a white man. I just don't necessarily need to go work for one, right? I don't need one telling me what to do. So that's really a distinction I want you to kind of consider, because some people act like whiteness has a magical power, that somehow if you're around white people and a white man calls you a name, that somehow you have to react to that. And my thought is, if his words have no power over my life, then why do I care what he thinks about me? Because he doesn't care what I think about him. We're just going to go and live our lives and do what we have to do. So that subtle form of white supremacy where you're overreacting to every single thing a white person says or does, no matter who that person is, I encourage you to reconsider that, because honestly, that's where you're taking something that's valuable. Your attention is a commodity. Your spiritual energy, that's a valuable commodity for you. And when you're applying that attention towards something, you're actually sort of celebrating that thing. You're empowering that thing. You're giving life to that thing. And so ultimately, I would say starve it of attention. Like I really don't think, unless you have a legitimate reason to feel that something a white person said is going to affect your life, that you should really give a damn. I think that the most important role is for you to think highly of yourself and focus on that. There's nothing magical about white people, but I do think that there's something magical about you. Okay. All right. So anyway, I'm gonna get out of here, guys, and please have a good night. It was real. I hope you learned something from this week. We're gonna meet again Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And you can log in at blackkeystogreatness.com. That's a whole life class, by the way, and there's a ton of stuff in there. If you guys want to actually go through the material there as well. If you want to hear the recordings of all these lectures we've done about 27, 28 of them. You can go to drboycebookclub.com. That's drboycebookclub.com. And also, the Black Wealth Bootcamp starts on January 6th. So if you'd like to be a part of that, don't sign up now. Sign up in a couple of days. We're going to offer a 48% discount for 48 hours. So if you'd like to join the Black Wealth Bootcamp, you'll get an email from me announcing that. And that it's really great. Everybody loves the bootcamp. All right, guys. So please hit the thumbs up button, share, subscribe before you get out of here. Love you. God bless you. And I'll see you all soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.